Every year, Americans spend billions on self-help, self-improvement, and transformation. But is it working? Welcome to the Transformation Truth Podcast, your home for a slightly irreverent and sometimes informed look at what it takes to change, why you don't have it, and what it will take to get it.
Howdy, and welcome to the Transformation Truth Podcast. I'm your host, Darren Hibbs, and my co-host, Abel Villarreal, there is the one on the other end of our FaceTime conversation, moving around.
This is the fun. This is the fun of FaceTiming.
This is the first time we're trying this. I'm going to be out of town for the next couple weeks, so we thought that while we have a little bit of a stable environment, I'm here in the studio, and Abel's at his house right now, out in the middle of the boondocks. We thought we'd give it a shot to see if we can make these recordings happen. And so you're getting to you, the viewer and listener. If you're listening to this, it's probably no different other than you hear a bunch of Abel moving around. But if you're one of our two viewers, then you're getting to experience the glory of FaceTime.
Yeah, this is, I was thinking about this morning as we decided to endeavor down this road about all of the things that we as children watched on television that we hoped one day we would have. Like, when you watch like the Jetsons, when you watch Star Trek, I mean, just a lot of the futuristic stuff that we're supposed to have already. It's 2015, we should be having some pretty cool stuff. And you and I are struggling to make FaceTime work. It's not right, man.
We're supposed to have hoverboards and flying cars, and we're still, when you watch the Jetsons, the video conference calls or whatever, the FaceTime stuff, they always worked. It's never like, hey, turn your none of that happened in the Jetsons. It just worked.
No, Mr. Sprocket never froze when he was calling to chastise George Jetson for whatever goof up happened there.
It didn't happen
at the place. So
it didn't happen.
What did George Jetson do? Do you have any idea? What was his job?
His job was to push a button. He had one button on his console that he had to push.
But that's what Homer Simpson did.
I think so.
So that job didn't evolve very much.
It didn't.
So I don't know that our future is that bright.
Actually, Homer Simpson never actually did anything. He just sat at that big console with all the buttons, and it occasionally accidentally hit like a meltdown button, but really nothing ever happened.
He was the one causing the drama.
Yeah,
nothing should have been happening. No, man. I want to have the meal at a push of a button. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and not just microwave. Microwave is still too involved. Like, you still got to go into the freezer and read the instructions and make sure you peel the plastic back and poke holes in it with a fork, and it's still really manual.
Yeah.
But like on the Jetsons, they literally just walked over to a machine, hit a button, and then like an entire turkey dinner would come out. That's what we need, man.
I don't know why we don't have that yet.
We need to, because I know you're crock potting something right now.
Yeah, actually, we're going the complete opposite direction in 2015, as my family's been eating too much processed, prepackaged food, and we decided it was time to stop that. And so I went on this long, epic. I was at the grocery store by myself for an hour and a half yesterday, buying non-processed foods for us to cook.
Are you serious?
For all week long. And we've never done this before. So it's exactly the opposite of being able to push a button. I've actually got tons of things that we're going to have to fix.
I don't even know what non-processed food looks like. I have no idea what that means. No idea. Brienne talks about it. My wife talks about it, and I'm clueless. Like I don't know anything's processed or not processed, and I'm okay with that.
Well, we're going to see how we like it.
Well, ignorance is bliss, my friend. So ignorance and cheesecake. But no, what else, man? What should we be having right now in 2015? What should be working and is not working? Because FaceTime's not doing it.
We don't have flying cars. Actually, FaceTime's working better than Skype did. I think pretty much most people's experience with Skype is trying to get Skype to work. That's most of the time. FaceTime does work better.
In our preparation for this podcast, I actually had to download the latest version of Skype last night and realized like I hadn't updated Skype or used Skype in probably about 5 years, and now from this morning I remember why I hadn't tried using it. So sorry, Skype. It's terrible. Terrible.
FaceTime at least hasn't dropped on us yet, but we're both using Apple devices here, so
Yeah, well, Apple to Apple, I guess it works.
apples to apples. But it kind of reminds me all of the processed foods and things that we do eat. It kind of reminds me of how if you don't actually put thought into what you eat, you'll just eat what you have. Go
Yeah.
Eat things that you can find, eat things that are convenient, or you go out to eat a bunch. Mm-hmm. And I know my family and I we're guilty of that a whole bunch. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of a metaphor for life as Abel continues to adjust his.
I'm going to get this thing, here. Man. I can't stand. And for those who don't know me very well, I am not diagnosed, but positive that I am OCD. And if I can't get this thing leveled, then this thing is just not worth it. I'm just going to walk. I'm going to walk out of this room. So I think I've got it.
I think you're level.
Good.
I'm looking at the lines there. I think you're level.
All right. God forbid we get a tremor or something here in a minute, because this thing's like hanging on.
Abel lives out where they're doing a whole bunch of natural gas and oil drilling. So I guess we'll find out if the saltwater disposal wells from the fracking are going to give you some tremors out there.
We'll find out.
Perfect timing right now if you did start to shake.
It would be. We could submit it to ABC or NBC for get some money, a little bit of change for submitting our video of live tremors happening in Central Texas.
There you go.
We'll see.
But actually, disciplining yourself to eat well is. That's a big thing for Americans. Most of the rest of the world, they don't have to discipline themselves to eat, or at least the developing world. They actually have to just do whatever they can to eat. And throughout human history, eating was a big task, a big chore, and now for us, it just kind of happens.
Do you know what the most eaten animal is in the world today?
A squirrel?
No.
Rabbit?
No.
Cow?
No.
Really?
Americans are cow crazy.
Well, that's true.
Goats. Yeah.
That's very interesting.
So yeah. So you think about all the goats in the world, and raising goats is a discipline in and of itself. But I think maybe even for us as Americans, we don't eat a lot of goat. We kind of look down.
I don't know that Americans eat much at all goat.
No, I do. But I'm Mexican American, and I kind of grew up with that.
Well, there you go.
I grew up going to Grandpa's house and saying, "Oh, what a cute goat," and becoming friends with it, and then Grandpa shooting it that afternoon.
Awesome.
Watching all the kids cry.
I don't think I've ever had goat. What does it taste? Does it taste like chicken?
No. It tastes a lot like beef. It's a little. I think the fat content's a little higher, but all you need for that, you just cook the meat, put it in a tortilla. And I'm convinced that Mexicans, as long as they've got onions, cilantro, salt, lime, and whatever the meat happens to be,
Mexicans can make anything taste good.
Oh man, but you just need those basic ingredients.
I've had lamb before, and I've always thought goat must taste like lamb, and I've never had good lamb. It's probably just been preparation. Really? Yeah, I've never enjoyed any lamb I've ever had, but it's probably because whoever was preparing it didn't do a good job or something.
But that proves we're picky about what we eat.
Yeah.
And the rest of the world takes kind of what's before them and makes the best of it. And then you think about still how every culture has their own kind of culinary thumbprint. And so there's disciplines even in how you prepare a meal, because I've had really, you can go to any taqueria and have Mexican food and say, okay, I'm probably never going to eat that again. Or you can go to, a 5-star, Mexican restaurant, which there are 5-star Mexican restaurants. I've been to one in Houston that was it was the same food I grew up eating, but it was just so beautiful. The presentation and even the way it was prepared was perfect. And so there's a discipline there even. So it's not just about eating food. Like you're saying, it's not just about eating food, but there's a discipline in what we put into our own bodies, in how we prepare it. But if you want to excel at anything, if you want something to be great, discipline is involved.
It is, and Americans spend more money on trying to lose weight from the food we eat than anybody in human history. I mean, you think about most people in human history, and being fat. Actually, being able to be fat was a badge of wealth and honor. Is that you actually had enough food that you could not be a thin little stringy guy.
Like, look how disciplined that guy is. Look how much he eats every day.
Yeah.
He forces himself to eat that much food. Wow, what a guy.
But now Americans spend tons and tons of money on trying to lose the weight that we put on because we don't think about what we eat.
Yeah, discipline in, discipline out, I guess.
Yeah.
You're gonna be shoveling that stuff into your body. You better be ready to do what it takes to make sure it gets back off of your body.
So if you, the listener and or viewer, haven't picked up yet, we're going to be talking a little bit about discipline today, which can be a good or bad word depending on which circle you run in. And I've encountered a lot of people that when they hear the word discipline, they kind of cringe. They reel in angst against against how that sounds to them. But in reality, discipline is nothing more than a mirror that shows you where your passions lie.
Yeah, and so let's kind of talk real quick about those two sides of the word discipline, because I think that I think most people, even as we say discipline, I think the first way it hits your ear is thinking about punishment, thinking about correction, and so there's that side of discipline. The verses that we read in Proverbs to discipline your child. What does Proverbs 13?
Proverbs 13:24 says, "Whoever spares the rod hates their children, but the one who loves their children is careful to discipline them."
Right, and so that first half of that scripture, I mean, that's kind of what we think of when we think of discipline. Like, don't spare the rod, And
most
so
people
that's
stop at the first half of that. That's
yeah, it's like right, and so it's like, okay, so that gives me every reason when I see my kid, jumping on top of my entertainment center to just go find the closest belt, or we like to use spatulas around here. So I think my kids are going to actually, as far as culinary discipline, my kids are probably going to run as far away from that as possible. They're probably going to just freak out when they see a spatula. So I'm afraid we're traumatizing them in that way, but we use that to kind of
they're going to be adults, and they're going to go to IHOP someday, and someone's going to be flipping
they're gonna
pancakes.
Freak out. You're going to freak out. They're going to run as fast as they can. So
they won't even know why.
They won't even know why. It's just going to be some second nature part of their instincts. But no, so that's what we think about. We think about correction, and it's something that it's something that I encounter every day. Working at the recovery center for I work for a faith-based rehabilitation through discipleship program, and so we get men who come in struggling with drug and alcohol addiction, and we find that a lot of their issues just lie in the fact that they have never taken to discipline very well, and so when they're in a situation of high stress or anxiety, or they have to question themselves in any way, shape, or form, they've just run to the alternative, which is, I don't want to feel bad, I want to feel good, and so they find themselves headlong in some kind of substance abuse, some kind of an addiction. And so now that they're in our care and we're needing to point that out to them, and whenever they step out of line, whenever they do something they know they weren't supposed to do, whenever they take advantage of some policy or just completely, turn away from that policy and do whatever it is that they want to do, we have to bring correction to them. And so that typically comes in the form of them not making phone calls to loved ones, or having lunch visits with friends or family, and it stings quite a bit.
Yeah.
We'll do other things too. We'll give them extra work on the recovery center, here on the grounds and stuff. But I know what really stings, what really hurts, is whenever they've been here for as long as they have, and I have to tell them, hey, this month you're not going to get to talk with your family because we need to deal with this issue, and it hurts. And so anytime we read those scriptures and talk about discipline, like, it's the first thing that comes in their head is, man, I hate discipline. I hate correction, So that's the first part of when we think about discipline. That's what we're thinking about. Somebody having to get onto us, somebody having to correct us, somebody having to bring a little bit of pain, and we don't like that part of it.
And I think the substance abuse, perfectly demonstrates. It's really a caricature of those two sides of discipline. Is you don't want discipline for your good. And that's something that most people don't want, is we don't want to feel that discipline that's intended to make us better, that's intended to correct problems in our life. And so we run away from it. And what we end up running into is we actually let our circumstances or our bodies dictate the discipline that we undergo. And so like in the case of substance abuse, you've got someone that rejects outside discipline from someone else or some authority figure, and they actually make it to where it's their body that's disciplining them.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And it's their body that's telling them, you will get this, and you will get it now, and you respond to what your body is telling you to do. So there's always going to be something that we're responding to, and that is discipline. The question is it something that we have chosen for ourselves, or is it something that someone else has chosen for us? Either our circumstances or our own bodies in the case of substance abuse, or anyone else. Do we choose that discipline for ourselves, or does someone else choose it for us?
Yeah, and another way that we talk about that is control. Is we do the things that we do because we want to have control of our own lives. But when we do what we want, what we don't understand is we're still not the ones who are in control. It's our sinful hearts, our selfishness that's in control. It's our flesh that's in control, rather than surrendering control to who we believe actually does, which is God. And we know that God has all things under His control. But we have this tendency to really fool ourselves into thinking that we're taking control into our hands. And the way that we like to do that is by following the path of least resistance. And so we don't want to be disciplined. We run from discipline. We resist it with all that we are. And the reason why is because at least what the Bible teaches us about becoming disciplined, and I think that it would be hard to argue if you asked anyone in any other circle of life, is if you want to get to where you want to be, if you want to become who it is that in your heart you're called to be, is that it's going to take a little bit of suffering. It's going to take some sacrifice. It's going to take some struggle, but that your belief is through that suffering and through that struggle and through that sacrifice that you're going to become the person that your life was meant to for you to become. And so I think about there's a quote by what's the author's name? Rowling, from J.K. Rowling. Okay, she says that she got shot down. I think like 30 or 40 times by publishers for the Harry Potter book. And she said that as she just struggled to try to get this thing published, she said that the more she struggled, the more the things in her life that were non-essential got stripped away, and that actually made her a better person. And so I don't think it's just necessarily a Christian concept. I think as we encounter struggles, we encounter sufferings, we encounter discipline. As discipline begins to challenge us and say, if you want to become this person, it's going to cost. This is what's going to cost you. That we find that all those things that are not essential to our life, we're confronted by them. We see how it's just something that we're trying to create for ourselves that really do nothing for us, and it puts us in a position of either allowing that thing to get stripped away, or for us to hold on tightly to it, and only to realize that we've been holding on tightly to absolutely nothing.
Yeah, Jesus puts it in terms of not just necessarily a spiritual understanding. Is he says in Luke 14:31-33, he says, suppose a king is about to go to war against another king. Won't he first sit down and consider whether he is able with 10,000 men to oppose the one coming against him with 20,000? If he is not able, he will send a delegation while the other is still a long way off and ask for terms of peace. In the same way, and this is interesting that Jesus says this, in the same way, those of you who do not give up everything you have cannot be my disciples. And what he's saying there is that if you don't think this through, if you don't sit down and consider and count the cost, and that's specifically what he's getting at, is this king here is actually sitting down before he goes to war, and he's counting the cost. What's it going to cost me? Can I win this? And he says, and he realizes, if I can't win this, there's no point in fighting the battle. I'm going to go see if I can't negotiate peace somehow. Generally that would be paying money or doing something. And Jesus is saying here, in the same way as anyone in a secular fashion would sit down and count the cost. I want you to count the cost of being my disciple. What do you have to do? What is this going to cost you if you really want to do this? And this is where kind of that mirror comes in of discipline, is you look at the things that the disciplines you have in your life, whether you don't, a lot of people don't think they are disciplined. They don't think they have disciplines in their life, but really, again, it goes back to, are your circumstances dictating what you do? Everyone has some level of discipline in their life. They have some level of choices that they make, and they cut things out, whether that's playing video games or doing drugs or whatever. Your circumstances, or you choose to discipline yourself, to give yourself to activities or things.
Right.
But if you look at what you do, you look at where your passions are, that's where your disciplines will be.
Right.
And if you say that, hey, my passions are for this, my passions are for one thing or another, but you have no discipline surrounding that, you have no schedule or goals or anything like that fueling those activities or those things that you do, then I think it's a pretty good indication, if those disciplines aren't there, that those really aren't your passions. If you want to look at where your passions are, look at where you spend your time, look at where you put your thought and your energy into what you do. And a lot of people never actually think about that. They never think through, what do I want to be? What do I want my goals to be, so that their schedules and their disciplines can follow that. They never actually count that cost. So what ends up happening is other people, whether they're bosses or the law or their bodies, something else is telling them who they're going to become and how they're going to get there.
Right. Yeah. And what's interesting there is, as we look at the second part of the proverb, that a parent should discipline their child in that way, that what we're hoping for is that our child will learn to count the cost. If you keep climbing on top of the furniture, it's going to cost you a sting on your backside. But because what we're trying to teach them is you're endangering yourself. Your passion should not be for climbing the furniture. Your passion should be for not winding up in the ER every other weekend. Your passion should be staying alive. And so that's why when our kid runs out into the road, without looking left or right, we grab them and we scoop them up and we spank them and tell them no, because we want them to be passionate about life, being alive. And sometimes it takes even us imposing our passion on them. We want them alive, and so it's us imposing our passion on them, that they might then begin to see what truly matters, and one, it's experiencing life, and so that's what our passions are all about. How do we best experience life? And I think what we fail to acknowledge is that it's going to take still the imposing of the will of another on our lives, so that we even know where life comes from. We spend so much time trying to decide, what do we want to be passionate about, and not enough time saying, if I was created for a purpose, can I trust my life into the hands of the Creator, so that He can impose His passion, His purpose on my life, that my heart might be turned toward what I should be giving my life to. And then realizing those things in our life that we probably don't need to be giving our lives to, that those things might be stripped away, and that we can actually experience life. And I think that's important. I think that's why Jesus goes on there in the book of Luke, and he talks about all the things that we've got to be willing to give up, and even talks about some pretty personal things. If you're unwilling to those who won't give up their mother, their father, their children, even their own life, can't be my disciple. That he's talking about this imposing of His will on our lives, that there's nothing more important than doing the will of the Father. But what he's not saying is that those relationships are unimportant. What he's saying is those in comparison, those relationships don't even come close, because it's our sinful hearts, it's our selfless hearts that end up taking something good, like a relationship with a loved one, or a job, a career, school. I mean, so many good things that our hearts turn into just horrible things when our focus and our energy goes into that one thing, instead of, and becomes a small picture thing instead of a big picture thing. But it's the bigger picture that ends up actually giving us focus and pushing us in the direction we need to go. And that's what the discipline of the father is about. The father is trying to discipline the child so that he might give him direction and see what's truly important for their life. But what we do is we end up spending our entire lives giving over all these things that don't add any value to us, and we're unwilling to bend, and we're unwilling to look at those things through honest eyes and say, this thing is doing nothing for me. What's it going to take to get this thing out of my life? And that's why we see guys come to the recovery center, because they've finally come to the end of the rope. The end of their rope. They finally have decided, I don't have what it takes to stop focusing on the things that are destroying my life instead of enriching my life, and I need the focus to come from another place. And so that's why they surrender themselves over to this faith-based program, because they begin to acknowledge in their heart somewhere that only God can give them that focus. Only through Christ can they begin to see a discipline of life that denies themselves, denies what they want for the greater purpose of what it is God created them for.
And I think that's a good point, is that if we don't choose to discipline ourselves, we will receive discipline in time. And it's just a matter of time. Depending on how far off track we get, that can be discipline from the law, that can be actually getting thrown in jail, that can be discipline from our family members, that could be discipline from other loved ones, and a lot of times the discipline that people encounter is just the feeling of burnout. They don't think about what they're doing and where their life is taking them, and eventually they just feel so empty and burnt out because they get to that place, and it causes them to stop, or it should cause them to stop and say, what do I need to do? And it brings them back to that point. I think that setting up your life in such a way where every 3 months or 6 months you sit down and you think about what do I want my life to be about? Actually coming back every 3 months or so and looking at your goals, looking at kind of the plan for your life that I encourage people to set up, is actually go and sit down, take time and think through, what do you want your life to be about? Not what do you want to do with your life in a career mentality, but even bigger than that, kind of look at a big picture and say, who do I want to be? Who do I want to be, not when I grow up, but who do I want to be when I'm 80? When I'm on my deathbed, what do I want to have left behind as kind of the signature of my life? And when you think about it, that you work backwards from there and you say, okay, what do I need to do this year to be that person? What do I need to do this month? And what do I need to do this week and today? How do you organize your schedule? How do you organize your life? You think backwards from who you want to be and revisit that every so often, because one of the things that is universal to mankind is that we're really good at getting off track. And either we're going to be the ones to discipline ourselves to align our schedules and our time with our passions, or life circumstances will dictate that for us.
Yeah, and I think it's important. It is important to have specific disciplines that you've implemented over time, and with experience, things that you need to focus on, things you shouldn't focus on. I think it's good to have those general rules in your mind and in your heart, but that it can still be, it can still throw us off if we're the only ones dictating that for ourselves. And so that's why it's important too, to have some form of accountability, whatever that is, to introduce the element of someone else into your life. And that's why, I'm an executive pastor for a church, and I'm the operations director for a recovery center. And yet still I've got people who I answer to. I've got people who I go to for advice. I've got people who I go to for suggestions. And the moment I start thinking that I know exactly how I need to discipline myself, I'm probably going to find myself in a whole lot of trouble. Because what I've learned more than anything about myself is I don't know the best way to direct myself. And so, obviously my relationship with God is crucial for that as well, because I go to God in prayer and say, God, what direction do you want my life to be going here? I know that at the end of my life, I want to be on my deathbed and just know that my entire life was given to God for His purpose. And so it becomes, like you're saying, it's an identity issue. It's if you just start thinking about what should I do, then what ends up happening is you can get really busy, and then realize at the end of your life that you really became nothing. But whenever you say my life is given over to, realizing the greater purpose of what I was, what I was created for, then I think what happens is every day when your identity begins to be wrapped up in God and in the life that He gives through Jesus, and saying Jesus is my life, I am becoming like Christ. That at the end of your life you won't be disappointed, because you'll be exactly who it was that you were designed to be as a member of the body of Christ. But if it's up to you and you're flying solo and it's about you changing the world and you trying to impact and you trying to do, that you're going to fall short. And I think no matter what you do, what you accomplish, you'll lay in your deathbed and still wish you had done more with your life.
I think that's one of the realities of life, is that all of us will fall short in some way. Not just, like Jesus says, we've all fallen short of the glory of God, and we've all sinned. But even when we set goals and things like that, we're all going to fall short of them. Mm-hmm. But it's amazing when you take the time to set those goals of who you want to be and set those priorities, you fall short a lot less. Even if you never even make the step of making a schedule and ordering your life, if you just even think about who you want to be and you set those goals and those priorities, you'll actually fail a lot less. We're all going to fail, and that's one of the things that makes it difficult, is that no one wants that feeling of failure. But that's really what we all experience when we try to do things. When we give ourselves to passions, we're going to experience a lot of failure. But if we don't think about who we want to be and what we want to do, we'll experience a whole lot more failure than if we actually count the costs and if we actually are intentional about how we want our lives to be.
Yeah, and listen,
go ahead.
I'm sorry for interrupting. And if you fail along the way, and we've talked about this before in another podcast, but what you're saying is the reason why you'll fail a lot less is I think because in those failures, you actually find opportunities for your weaknesses to become strengths. And in that way, it's no longer a failure. It's actually a win. It's just a matter of us being able to acknowledge that our failure just becomes a moment for a stripping away of who we are. And I've got a guest coming in from behind. No? Okay.
I saw a door open, but no person, so it must have been a short person.
It's a short person. He's still in here, so he might join us here and give some input momentarily.
Well, I actually wrote a book on this, and I called it Destiny's Discipline. Several years ago, I wrote this, and it's a short book that to listeners and people watching this, I want to give away for free to anyone watching and listening. If you go to transformationpodcast.net, and on there on the sidebar of the website or at the bottom of any one of the podcasts, you'll see a form that you can sign up for our email list. If you go there and sign up, I want to give this book to you for free, and it's a very short. It's 20 pages, but it's packed full of really helpful information about just encouraging you to slow down and take some time to think about who do you want to be, what do you want to do with your life, what kind of person do you want to be, and then how do you walk backwards from there to implement that on a daily basis. And again, you're going to fail at being able to accomplish that, but you're going to fail a lot less if you think it through. You're going to be amazed at what you can accomplish. Whenever I go back on a quarterly or yearly basis and look at the goals and things like that I set out for myself, especially yearly goals. I'll set yearly goals and I'll say, I want to accomplish this year. When I actually take the time to do that and I look back at it after a year, I'm amazed at how many of the things that I accomplish. Versus when I haven't done that in the past, I'm amazed at how little I've accomplished with my time when I didn't think about it on the front end. And so I want to give that to our listeners and viewers. Go to transformationpodcast.net and sign up for that, and we'll email you a copy of that book.
And it's called Destiny's Discipline.
Destiny's Discipline.
Because it's not how Destiny's Discipline of Destiny's Child, right? It has nothing to do with Beyonce.
It's all about Beyonce. Everything's all about Beyonce.
Okay, it's how she became so great.
There's I don't know if you've seen that Saturday Night Live skit, but there's if you say anything bad about Beyonce, or I think even if you fail to mention Beyonce, There's people. There's like an FBI unit that comes for you. They're gonna find you.
Yeah, don't say anything bad about Beyonce. I don't think. No, let's not do that. But no, this book is not about Beyonce, probably. So
there's not much about Beyonce. I'll say
not
that.
much. But you don't want the Beyonce patrol to come after you. So we'll just say there's a little bit maybe in there about it.
There's a little bit. There's actually like that much. I don't know if you can see that, but
it fits right between the fingerprints of your fingers.
If the Beyonce patrol is watching or listening to this, we don't want them to come after us.
No, we'll just say that we're mentioning Beyonce's mother's name on the cover of the book.
There you go.
And that's it.
There you go.
So Destiny's Discipline. Sounds like a great book. Sign up, and hopefully you'll win that.
There you go. It's not a contest. We'll give it away to everybody that signs up.
To everybody who signs up. See, you can't lose.
You can't lose.
Sign up. Sign up.
Lose.
Yeah. And why don't you tell everybody where they can find us online?
Online, you can find us at transformationpodcast.net. And if you want to find us on iTunes, you can go to Transformation Truth. Go to iTunes and search for Transformation Truth, and we will come up. Unfortunately, there's a couple of other people that like have their shirts off and are flexing for you. A couple other podcasts about.
That's not me, and that's not Darren.
It's not me right now. I mean, like we said in a previous podcast, I believe. I think the my days of being a men's underwear model are over.
No, it's before after. If you look at those pictures, they're the after guys. We're the before guys.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, for the Transformation Podcast, I am Darren Hibbs.
And I am Abel Villarreal.
And we are signing off. Thanks for joining our very first mobile podcast.
Thanks, guys.
See you next week.